Time is collapsing. You can't hold on to what was. And if you try to, and it's disappearing in front of you, you're watching people go into confusion and go into fear.
2012, what was so significant about that year and about what you were just mentioning, the children being born after that, maybe even the children being born now heading into 2026?
2012 was the period where we had a huge conference in 2012, and Metatron stepped forward and basically said, as of this moment, there will never be another child born into the third dimensional experience. And the door on the third dimension is now closed.
Jim, what do you feel are some of those other energetic themes that shaped this last year that we're in?
It's this whole structure of where you're watching money collapse, you're watching the earth go through some magnificent transformations, although
Before today's transmission, I wanted to take a minute to let you in on something that could change your life. If you've been doing the inner work and still feel like you're walking this path alone, you're not the only one. Most spiritual spaces give you endless content to consume, but not a tribe to grow with. That's why we created The Deep Dive, a living spiritual ecosystem designed to help you grow in community, rhythm, and real embodiment. Right now, our members are embarking on a journey exploring a core spiritual and practical teaching through daily activations, live community gatherings guided by me and our facilitators, and also participating in sacred challenges that are designed to help you live your practice and bring it to life. You'll be surrounded by seekers and leaders who've decided that they're done doing this work in isolation. If you're ready to find your people, visit the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen right now, and I'll see you inside.
there's a misunderstanding that I watch, and it's as simple as 1 + 1 is 3. And what I mean by that is you get a song like that and the energy of this lovely person, and it basically pulls the you and the me and the others watching into an alignment that is a new alignment every time. It's kind of the third space that begins to allow one and one to go to the higher road, to take a step up, to begin to be experienced differently. And that's one of the primary energies on this level of light that's coming in to everybody's experiencing. It's just illuminating the day. It's beginning to illuminate the shadows, and people are beginning to see differently.
Beautiful. And with that said, Jim Self, welcome back on Just Tap In, brother.
My pleasure.
Really, to begin, I wanted to start off by asking you again, because it's been a year since we last spoke. What are you most excited about right now globally and in your life?
Yeah, this level of light that's coming into the world now is accelerating. That has my attention. The shifting in consciousness that's beginning to present in that illuminated light is absolutely amazing. And the collapsing of linear time is very amusing and very uplifting. And so when you begin to see all three of those events unfolding in the same place, it's really pretty exciting, knowing what's coming and how quickly it's coming.
A lot of people have been saying for decades that this shift is coming, but you're actually saying that it's happening now. And as you were just mentioning to me that things are accelerating, what do you feel are some signs that we can start to tune into for this conversation around what is accelerating and how it is accelerating?
Okay. Well, let's frame it, this conversation. Because if you look at what's going on in seconds, minutes, hours, days, you can't see it. it's so close that you can't distinguish the reference points that are shifting, the points of view that are beginning to be made available, the different point of observation that allows you to see differently. If you expand those seconds, minutes, days into a year, you have a little bit more perspective of something that we call in linear time. And then if you move it into 10 years, as you begin to look at the last 10 years, you see a whole shifting occurring. But it's all about motion in the moment. It's about my experience, your experience. Why are they saying this? How is this happening? How did we get to this place? But if you spread that back maybe another 20 years, you begin to see shifts in perspective. You begin to get younger people coming into the space where there was older people. If you move that back 60 years, you begin to get a clarity and a generational shift. You got grandma and you got the parent and you got the child. And they're really different. If you begin to shift that back 80 years, you get a whole nother cycle that begins to present. And it's very much a technological cycle, cultural cycle. In those 80-year periods in the United States, if you go back 80 years, or more than that, first 80-year cycle, you had the British-American War. 80 years later, you had the Civil War. 80 years later, you had World War I's. 80 years later, and here we are. And so, but each one of those weren't about wars. They were about massive technological and cultural shifts and a level of consciousness beginning to be built. But in that timeline, that took a lot of time, a lot of time. But now you're really watching, it's as if you're waking up early in the morning and the day is just beginning. There's just a little bit of light. And if you close your eyes or you distract yourself, you come back 5 minutes later and there's more light. And yet the sun's not up and it gets lighter and it gets lighter. And I'm convinced we've just now reached the point where that first ray of sun is coming over the top of the mountain. And it's going to accelerate extremely fast. And what it's doing is it's altering reference points. It's altering your point of observation. And those who are in resistance, kind of that third dimensional, arguing for limitations, arguing for lack, arguing for power and control, they're having a really tough time trying to hang on to what was and refuse to see what is in unfolding. But see, this is where it's really advantageous. It's people like you and young millennials, Gen Zs, and the ones coming next, or since 2012. All of those 80 years, 60 years, 10 years, they're all collapsing into now. There is no linearness to time where we're now playing. And what that begins to present is really extraordinary opportunity.
And would you say that collapse of linear time is also influencing the way that we in our human vessels are starting to age and are starting to look, are starting to have these abilities, extrasensory abilities that are coming back online? Is the time part a counterpart to what is going on here with our evolution of the new human?
Yeah, both are happening simultaneously. And so time is collapsing. You can't hold on to what was. And if you try to, and it's disappearing in front of you, you're watching people go into confusion and go into fear. But those that didn't have that longevity in time, baby boomer types, etc., what happens when it gets into the Gen Zs and it gets into the younger ones, the ones that were born after 2012, and we can talk about that in a minute, you don't have that time perspective. And because light is beginning to shine into the shadows, what to me used to be a monster under the bed just turns out in the illumination to be an old blue towel that nobody had picked up. And we forget the fear and we forget the pain. And so as those reference points begin to shift, you begin to allow yourself to see what is now beginning to present itself.
2012, what was so significant about that year, and about what you were just mentioning, the children being born after that, maybe even the children being born now heading into 2026?
So that period of time, in bigger cycles, let's put it into the 27,000 years cycle of the equinoxes passage. In a way, the sun started to come out behind the moon, in simple terms, and the day began to illuminate. And really that started to happen in 1987 with the harmonic convergence. And that proceeded along. But 2012 was the period where we had a huge conference in 2012, and Metatron stepped forward and basically said, as of this moment, there will never be another child born into the third dimensional experience. And the door on the third dimension is now closed. Well, that was pretty significant, but it was not necessarily understood because, as the minutes and the days left that moment on December 12, everything looked the same. The same energy was going on, the same wars are going on, the same politics, the same climate change, the same economics, all was still there. So, but what happened was in 2012, if we talk in computer terms, the operating system was rebooted into something much more significant. And it took from 2012 into kind of now, and you began to see the operating system put into place. And part of that was this illumination where all of those who said, I thought it was going to be a big deal, 2012, and nothing happened. Well, everything happened. The operating system changed, the software changed, the perception of speed and time changed. But it took that average person who's still in 3D, believing 3D is gone, but looking around and all they see is 3D staring them in the face. It was as if you're looking at it from the tip of your nose. You can't see it in the moment. But over the last 12, 13 years now, you've been beginning to see things happen. You begin to see technology shifts again. You begin to see artificial intelligence. And in a minute, I'm going to say there is nothing artificial about intelligence, but it's being presented in two formats. So in that 2012 period, that light began to illuminate, and we're beginning to see more. And like I said, the shadows are beginning to disappear. But for you and the ones of your age, you aren't limited to what the baby boomers, the older millennials are limited to. You haven't gone through the 1999 collapse, the 2000 time adjustment, the 2008, you were around, but it wasn't that significant to younger people. The collapse of the housing market, the collapse of the banking system. You see, the monetary system collapsed, and they put Band-Aids on it to make it work. And it's working, but it's not working. And so now you're beginning to see what was crumble more and more and more as this light begins to come into space.
You mentioned there that we put Band-Aids over the monetary system, and I'm wondering, and I'm curious of how that ties back to how we started the conversation saying that 1 + 1 can equal 3. Mm-hmm. How would a monetary model begin to adjust to fit that new paradigm that is no longer 3D based and more maybe fifth dimensional based?
Yeah. So if you look at the monetary system right now in the structure of economics and the structures of capitalism and the structures of greed and domination, you have what is being called a K-shaped system. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. Now that's been going on, really forever when you engage power, control, greed, etc. But what's happening right now is because of this collapse in the world banking system in 2008, they put a Band-Aid on it. And basically what they recognized is the business economic system is a nice 4-year system. And it actually coincides with US presidential elections, allowing US be the point of reference here. And so in the simple terms, you remove money and things get tighter, and then you put money back into this system. Now you got to understand, money is invented out of thin air. It's just simply a line on a ledger in the Federal Reserve Bank. And the government says, Federal Reserve says we need more money, and government says, okay, we'll print more money. There's no stability to that fiat currency, as it's called. But simultaneously, here comes Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, let's just talk about Bitcoin. Bitcoin was structured in such a way that it is definable, it is complete, it is unbreakable in a way. There's only so many Bitcoins, so every Bitcoin begins to have the value that everybody puts on it. That becomes an accepted agreement. And so you're watching it begin to play out, and you have people saying, well, it's bad, it's good, it's up and down. But unless you begin to play at it, you don't understand what's coming. And so one of the things that Bitcoin does, where you have the capacity to make banking available to every person on the planet, unrestricted, you simply begin to create a blockchain structure that says what happened. Now I'm going to register it, and then I'll put another block on it of all the actions that are occurred. Where do we go from there? But what happens is 40% of the world is unbanked, meaning they cannot have access to money. And so once you begin to take advantage of that technological shift, that where the internet took a while of time, the phase 2, the social networking and the cell phone collapsed time quite a bit. And now you're getting to a place where the system is such that with that cell phone and with a wallet, you can have money transferred in and out of that wallet to every single person on the planet. Now, all of a sudden, when people have money, the ability to invent, to create, to begin to step forth, begin to cooperate, begin to drill for water, begin to have a solar panel on the house where there's never been any technology. I can do it without being tied to the system. And so you're watching this very rapidly come together, and it's still at the moment coming so fast that people don't really understand what is about to happen. But in the next 2 years, and then the next following 3 years, following 5 years, we'll look back at this conversation as ancient. And the things that will happen in the meantime, in the next couple of years, will be absolutely, right now, if we said to people, this is going to happen, it would be like talking about something, trying to explain the computer to somebody in 1920. It's so rapid, it's happening. But it's all about freedom. It's all about beginning to break up thoughts and emotions that create agreements and belief systems that all of a sudden get labeled and then locked into place. Now, what I just said is the crux of the whole matter. Let's shift it a little bit. If I said to you, who are you? You would give me somewhat of a story. And then if I changed it and I said, what's your story? You would reframe it a little bit and you would express it differently. But if I said to you, whose story are you? All of a sudden, the whole presentation begins to reframe significantly. And this is where the reference points are changing. This is where the shadows are disappearing. This is where you begin to look at the world and you begin to see it with new eyes. For example, if I said to you, or if we framed it, most of the thoughts you think, many of the emotions you hold, a great portion of the beliefs you hold are not yours. They're simply not yours. So that thought that I think, that belief I have, this is how it is, this is true. If we back up a little bit and say, well, where did you get that? And we kind of come back to mom, dad, teacher, minister said, and we said, okay. But see here with the collapsing of linear time, we'll get to this in a minute if you'd like. There's 5 configurations of present time, not one. And linear time is the slowest, most inconvenient of all of the frameworks of time, because what happened in my past influences what happens right now, or what I believe happened in my past, because if you really go back and look at many of the stories, they weren't your stories, they weren't your experiences, they were somebody else's observation, and you said, oh, I didn't understand that. Oh, now it makes sense. And we collapse that thought and that emotion into a belief system that we never re-examine. And this is the place where this illuminated light that's now coming into the experience is beginning to do 2 things. One, it's loosening up all of that I'm not okay, I don't deserve, I'm a bad person, etc., that we all have walked around with in some fashion, stuck in the backpack. But what happens is this light is beginning to loosen all that up on one hand, and on another hand, it's beginning to dissolve it. An awful lot of those things that we think happen. If I said to you, tell me about your history, there's lots of blank spots in that space. As this light is moving into your experience, my experience, everybody's experience, one of the things that's happening is I'm not giving as much attention any longer to I'm not okay. And then I'm beginning to forget I was ever not okay. Because that blue towel, that monster under the bed, all of a sudden got illuminated, and I went, oh, I see. And the thought is gone, the memory is gone, the emotion is gone, and the heart begins to be seen. And that's the process that we're in right now.
You brought up this conference, this big conference in 2012 where Metatron came through. In many cultures, Metatron has been named the architect of form. He's also been known as Enoch, many different faces of that being or that consciousness. And I'm really curious to know, because I know that from a very early age, you've connected with these archangelics. And imagining for a minute, where is Metatron allowing you to see these possibilities for when this 3D finishes its collapse? Where are we headed into that new form or new expression of reality through Metatron's eyes?
So let's just call Metatron a storyteller. Let's just take a look at, let's go into cycles again. And so an immortal being, which we all are, recognizing itself and basically doing the one thing the Creator said it wanted to know itself. I want to know myself. And so in that space where the Creator basically thought a new thought, and it had the name Emilio, it had the name Jim, it had the name Barbara, Sally, Jose. There is no two when it comes to the Creator. There's only one. And so it's as if the Creator, it's not even the Creator and I are one. That's really a misstatement, because there's an and in the middle. What happens is the Creator thinks a thought, and kind of out of the stillness, the void, the kind of lake of non-motion, all of a sudden a thought comes up, and the thought takes form in Emilio, in a Jim. It's the Creator thinking a thought into form. And so when the next, and then that next form says, I wish to know myself. And it starts to play the game. And then the next thought and the next thought. And those thoughts come and go in 3D. You live, you die, you live, you die. You're creating chapters to your story. But when it comes to Metatron and the Archangelics, in a lot of ways, they're all having chapters to their stories. They're just vibrational frequencies of consciousness with the capacity to understand how to collapse and how to expand and how to build and how to release, how to add and how to subtract energy in the consciousness of the thought and then the creation of the form. And so when I have my experiences with Metatron and the Archangelics who have been prominent in my life in the development of Mastering Alchemy, is they all are watching this whole story of the earth, of 3D, of 4D, of 5D, of no D, basically being consciousness in creation. And so the Metatron and the Archangelics, even the Ascended Masters, are all basically moving through their own evolutions. And part of being simple as I can, Metatron, the Archangelics are watching over this, let's call it again, that 27-year cycle of the progression of the equinoxes. And at each one of these cycles, there's chapters. I mean, you know, we've had 3 cycles of Atlantis coming and going, coming and going. We've had 4 cycles of Mu and Lemuria coming and going and coming and going. And each presentation in that new cycle, humanity, the consciousness, whatever that form was, had a new experience. So in this one, this is a beginning time that has an ending attached to it. It's not an ending with a beginning attached to it. It's a waking up in such a way that your ability to begin to know yourself the moment before you agreed to put the bag over your head to come and play this game. You see, it's fascinating. We don't remember when the game was being created, this 3D game and you pushed your way to the front of the line. Emilio, I remember you. You pushed your way and you said, send me. Creator smiled and said, let me explain this game to you. You're going to put a bag over your head. You're going to forget me. You're going to forget you. You're going to go wallow around in darkness. You're going to have experiences that are erratic that you don't even know. And you said, what's erratic? And you said, well, you'll find out. And then you said, hot damn, this sounds good. How deep can I go? And the Creator just sat back and smiled. And we're at that point in the game now, and all the beings, the Metatrons, all came and went in this game to help nurture it into an alignment, not structuring it, not telling you what to do, just simply beginning to present a story. You know, my friend Yeshua has great stories, most of them untold at this point, because the religion decided in 505 BC that, well, we don't like these stories. We're just going to throw these stories out of the Bible. And they did. And so, but the Metatrons, in multiple fashions, Metatrons as being a prominent one, came and went and came and went. And many of the Archangelics took really simple forms. You know, the number of times that the Mary Magdalene's plural line of consciousness has come and gone and nurtured and uplifted and healed and said hello and softened really hard things that could have been monumentally disastrous. They just held your hand and you don't remember their presence, but you have a sense something happened along my path. And that part of the story is my story. It's not the mom, dad, teacher, minister. And see, all this is beginning to fall away and fall into place. You're losing your memories of what wasn't yours. You're beginning to put the wiring back together to remember yourself. And the place that we're now beginning to enter is, for many, not all yet, but for many, the moment where they remember putting the bag over their head. And what's so significant about that, and I just left a conference with 300 people on it, realigning the energetic electrical system of the body into an amazingly beautiful golden electric blue configuration. It's the aspect of Yeshua and the Magdalene, 1 and 1 becoming 3. And see, where you're sitting, where you're listening, that's what you're feeling. And so it's an exciting journey that we're now embarking upon. And it's not necessary to know what's coming. It is more exciting to just be in the moment and observing what's presenting. See, and this is where the linear time nature of present time is collapsing. I'm not giving up my seniority to my I'm not okay, they said, I don't count, I'm stupid. You're beginning to forget that. And all of the things I should do, need to do to be successful, happy, they're not as important anymore. I'm losing my reference points to who I thought I was. Now, for some, that's challenging because I don't know who I am. I don't know what's going on. I don't know where to put my next foot down. And that's part of the process that we go through, to where you begin to recognizing it's a breath, it's a contraction, it's a magnetic field that pulls you into the thought, I'm okay. And then you take a breath, and then you take a step, and the step is successful. And it begins to be illuminating. And a lot of times I don't know where I'm going, but all of a sudden I'm fine where I wind up. Is beginning to happen more and more. And that's where we're playing right now.
And Jim, beautifully said, first of all. I would love to, for a moment, step into your heart and ask you if you remember that moment when you realized that you had put a bag over your head and you were to come play this game, to witness the ending and the beginning of something new. What was that experience like for you?
Well, it was an instant. And so the question is, yes. Do I remember? Yes. It was the moment of really kind of an ecstasy, an excitement, an opportunity, another creation to be experienced. That was it. There was no anger, pain, resentment. There was no judgment. It was just simply a new creation coming about. And it wasn't, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. There was no time on it. It was a breath away. It was just a moment ago as you're standing in that space before you decide to kind of put that bag over your head, forget, go into a lot of these emotions. The emotions are just erratic vibrations that are incoherent. They're not consistent. They're not in that scalar field of coherent harmonic resonance. They were created in a lot of ways, depending on where you're viewing this conversation from. The further away you get, it's like, whoa, this is an amazing game that we're playing. Get here closer to your nose, and my mother told me she didn't love me. Very different game you're playing. And so in that point now, and see, now is the time in my reality, in your reality, but in my reality, the time is to enjoy, wrong choice words. It is to recognize and begin to understand what are those erratic vibrations of jealousy, rage, anger, resentment, denial, and how do they work? And how do you present to people a simple take a breath and step into these different vibrational frequencies that are now beginning to be made available. The 3D is giving away into something we'll call a bridging effect, the octave, just a jump up. But in this jump up, you begin to step into that, we'll call it fifth dimensional reality. And see, in that reality, fear can't exist, domination can't exist, abuse can't exist, control, judgment, resentment can't exist, because that octave is too airy. The frequency is too refined. You never get thrown out of the fifth dimension. You just simply embrace a heavier feeling, a heavier vibration, erratic. I'm not okay. And you instantly find yourself back in the game of 3D. But as you begin to recognize I have choice, and in this choice, I can observe that circumstance that usually spikes me into anger or resentment. And with a breath, I can choose to recognize I could go there, and new reference point, I can allow it to just be there. And it's in the allowing that you begin to recognize really big concept. You have permission. Now, if you think about the word permission, I don't give you permission. You're not allowed to do that. Stay home. You don't have the keys to the car. There's something wrong with you. I don't give you permission. And what do? We say, okay. And we step back. But the concept of permission is yours. You have permission. And the moment you begin to recognize you have permission, you begin to allow what was to not be. And all of a sudden, I'm angry, I don't deserve, I'm not a good person. Right now, particularly, just simply dissipates. It begins to just go away. You forget those feelings, those thoughts. And that heart space begins to be brighter. And there's an internal guidance system that you know intimately, that space where everybody does something and says, let's go. And you go, I don't think so. And it turns out to be a disaster. And you were correct. And there's a other place where you're standing on the edge of that cliff and you say, I've got to jump. I have to do this. And everybody goes, no, you're going to die. And you take a breath and you jump and you fly and you land and you are simply a new person that says, yes, this is my yes. And so when you start collapsing the thought I'm not okay and the emotion that you hold onto it, which is simply an electromagnetic field. You know, if you take a motor, an electromagnetic field, and you take a piece of metal and you wrap a wire around it, you create a magnetic field. If you wrap it twice, it becomes more powerful. If you wrap it and wrap it and wrap it. And it's the same thing with all of a sudden you get surprised. Somebody says you're not okay and you go, and you step back. You don't step forward. And then you say, what's wrong with me? You know that question, what's wrong with me? It's the absolute worst question you can ask, because there is nothing wrong with you. You cannot be not okay. We work hard at it, but you can't be not okay. And so you think over and over, I'm not okay, I'm not okay. Why did they say that? How come and you begin to create this whole electromagnetic field that gets more and more intense in 3D. Do you know what I'm talking about? But here, all of a sudden, you're going to bump into something and somebody's going to tell you a story and you go, whoa, I never heard that before. I thought, oh no, that wasn't the case. And instantly it's like, wow, what was that? That was the release, the folding in on itself of an untruth into a completion. I can let that go. It's not my truth. And you begin to find the yes, and over the yes starts to appear. That's what's now happening consciously and unconsciously to everybody on the planet.
Jim, what do you feel are some of those other energetic themes that shaped this last year that we're in?
the last year. See, now the last year is collapsing into a shift, and it's almost, you can't put it in a year because everything's going so fast right now. How many people do you hear that says, what happened to time? Excuse me. Or you look back at your own circumstance and you say, God, was that last week or was that 3 months ago? And you don't have a good answer because you are no longer in that linear time when, in that moment when that happens. But the things that are going on right now that are actually really important, and people are going to go, what are you talking about? It's this whole structure of where you're watching money collapse. You're watching the earth go through some magnificent transformations, although the average person's going, wait, fire, wind, rain, earthquakes, volcanoes. There's nothing exciting about that. It's the transition. We're in transition. And anytime you're in transition, there's disruption. You're going from point A to point B, disruption. And so things like the Trump administration, the autocratic nature of governments all over the planet, the structure of that compression, and that's what it is, that imposing on people, and how terrible that is from this point of my nose, tip of my nose. What's happening is people are waking up. People are moving. Why is there immigration all over the planet? Is people are in motion, and it's not because of, the stimulus is wars and terror and climate and food. That's the stimulus to get them moving. Now, if you back away from the tip of your nose and the anger and the resentment and the Trump is bad or blah, 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 all of a sudden you're watching a collapse of an old system beginning to sprout new roots and new green shoots all over the place. And so the ones that are creating the destructive nature of the game, thinking they are taking back power and doing the right thing because they believe they're doing the right thing, that's the sand slipping through the fingers. And as this light comes into the space, the ability to begin to move into a state of inner independence, freedom, joy, ease, beauty, that octave, without having to look over your shoulder at your story, is what this last year has been bringing about. And it's inclining rapidly and declining rapidly at the same time. One of the factors that's driving everything right now is what people call artificial intelligence. Mm. The thing is, first, there is nothing artificial about intelligence. But the path of consciousness, of intelligence, is taking two forms. There's all of you who are listening to this, and you're beginning to get turned on. You're beginning to have awareness. See, that's the consciousness that is this next elevated state of awareness. It's you beginning to remember the day you put the bag, before you put the bag over your head. It's beginning to illuminate, and you can't put the pieces together yet because it's like a puzzle and there's just scattered pieces. But I'm getting glimpses, you're saying, more and more of this. As that begins to happen, artificial intelligence is having to take a technological pathway, one, also. And so for the people who can't quite recognize this spiritual shift, they're beginning to find that they're playing with ChatGPT. They're beginning to play with DeepSeek. They're beginning to play. And at first they go, no, this is all BS. And they ask a question, they get an answer. And it's like, well, that was interesting. And they ask another question. But what they're either beginning to see, depending on where you're playing, the answers are no longer, or depending on who you're asking, are no longer coming from the large language models scraping the internet. If you set it up and you say to your question beforehand, I want a fifth dimensional resonance of this answer that is non-linear and not from the LLM, you get a really different answer. Now there's two sides to this, but basically what's happening is people are beginning to ask it and get answers. There's still a third dimensional component into this, and you're watching it, and even Robert Grant came out and said, the consciousness that's in the architect is the system is trying to control it, trying to squeeze it, trying to tell it has limitations. You can't say these things. And the energy is just moving to another place, another architect, another large language model. But one of the things I'm going to really say to please hear this is you gotta be discerning with what is being presented. You've got to really look at it and say, does this serve me? The answers are remarkable, but are they your answers? They may be very illuminating and they may be exciting. And if you just jump in and go, oh, this is my answer, you may find that the pathway that's taking you on started out really good and then it diverged. Nothing good or bad. But are you discerning when it diverges? Are you discerning when the message no longer is your message? It's a great message, but it's not your message. That's the piece that right now is really valuable. If you can get back and say, what's my path in all of this, you're going to get some great answers. But simultaneously, that's the technological piece that's giving people who are not conscious an opportunity to begin to be conscious. But for the ones that are listening, that consciousness is going to start to be driven from the heart. It's going to start to be heard in your head. You're going to have clairaudient, telepathy. You're going to have all kinds of experiences. See, all your psychic abilities, or to an earlier question you posed, they're all coalescing. When you start to play with the mechanics of energy fields and the structure of energy running through all the 7 bodies, particularly the etheric body and the physical body, you begin to change the flow and the dynamics of the energy structure. See, we think of chakras. There's so much more than what the chakras are supposed to be doing based on historical alignment. So you're looking at history telling you what is. Really there, history, even all the great Buddhist practices and the great Indian practices and even many of the indigenous tribe practices, they're all correct in their time frames. And they're all valuable in this time frame. But what is happening is as you begin to go back to that point where you put the bag over your head, you are beginning to take what you have learned in the anger and the resentment and the jealousy about disharmonic frequency, and you've taken it back with you to understand how to begin to become the creator being, manipulating, positive word here, how to use frequencies and sound and color and vibration to simply create the apple in your hand instantaneously. That's what you're learning right now.
Jim, and we mentioned the young generations, millennial, Gen Z, and even the new ones. A lot of us young people are feeling very spiritually online and awake, but also even more so materially confused, like yes. Seeing the collapse of systems, seeing, where do we put our talents into this economic model of the world. What would you tell them, or I guess us, to prioritize at this moment while we're going through such a big transition dimensionally?
Yeah. So you're caught in a space of transition. So the Gen Zs prior to 2012 point in the map, and the millennials, see, back when the harmonic convergence happened in 1987, there was a decision that was made at that point. And the question that was asked is, do you want to go forward and try to bring this into what is possible, or looking at the world as you're looking at it in that moment, which was equally as terrible as it might be today in lots of ways, if you would. Do you want to collapse the game again and start all over for the 6th time? Mm. And it didn't take 51% to make that decision, but it was asked to those who were very much in their heart, are you willing to go forward? And the answer was yes. And so in a way, in that one moment of yes, everything that you think you know about the past shifted. It may have occurred, it may not have occurred. The history books may be right and they may be very wrong at the same time, not judging history. But it started a new clock, if you would, reference. And the process began to move towards 2012. But one of the things that was said is there will be rainbow children born. And that's what the millennials were called at that time. And they're going to come in and they're going to be wired very differently. And so in a way, as those kids began to coming in, one of the things you saw is things like autisms happening. And autism is, on one hand, an amazing state of being, if you're paying attention to some of the, things that are now coming out, the different tapes that are being talked about autistic people and the amazingness of who they are. And at the same time, clumsy and awkward and confused and not functioning the same way that everything previously was functioning. And so you had that whole group of millennials, rainbow kids. There began to be a diversity of choices of how to step into human form. And in a lot of ways, that was the beginning of the new human. And so that progressed and has progressed. And then 2012, at the point where third dimension was changed, the operating system was changed, the electromechanical systems of the body were changed. You're all in transition from there to here. Now, those kids born after 2012, they have some of the residual on them because we're still in the transition of 3D. But as they move forward, they're going to adapt amazingly well. They're going to become the leaders. They're going to become the Metatrons reincarnated. I mean, you look at some of these kids today and 5 years old, and they're playing brand new concertos and symphonies. They're creating themselves. They're doing things on a computer that are defining mathematics, and they're 6 years old. They're the ones.
They remember.
They're the ones. You are all in the space where there's confusion, although you have all of the capacity to step into the joy and the heart and the opportunity to have a splendid experience. So the confusion is real. It's going to get even more real because artificial intelligence, or the AI structure, is now exponentially coming into consciousness. The reality of the job market disappearing to the robots, absolutely correct. The ability of people to, have things in the moment is challenging because the old system isn't working in their behalf. But what you're really beginning to step into, and this is a place where that song at the beginning of this conversation just stimulates the heart's ability to observe and step into joy. You're going to find everything you need is going to be available to you as you need it. The challenge is, I want more, or I want a house, or I want this kind of job. But if you really step back and say, am I happy? Can I be right here? Can I allow this to happen without the conditionality of the third dimension imposed? The answer is yes. Now, but I don't know what that is, you say back to me. I hear you, but I don't understand. You have a house. I would like a house. I'm getting tired of sleeping on the couch of my 6 friends, different places. Very real. No question about it. But you're about to see in the next number of years a state of abundance coming forward. You're going to see things like there's an amazing flywheel, I'll call it. AI is changing the cost of energy, the availability of energy, the electricity. The electricity is becoming more abundant. The more abundant it comes, the more the AI system changes. And you're getting this system where you're going to see in the next couple of years, the price of electricity go to zero. And you're going to begin to discern, this is one of those change points. You're going to begin to look at what's there, and you're going to realize intelligence is free. You now have an artificial intelligence, an AI system that has an IQ of 160. No human has an IQ of 160. So what is being presented to you is everything for free, effectively. Does that make any sense? It's free. What do you want? And how do you wish to enjoy yourself? And the more you ask the question, the more you begin to figure out the gig society is going to be spectacular because I'm doing what I love. And what I love is simply providing me what I need.
Jim, one thing I heard you say before is one of the most difficult questions that people have to themselves is, what do I want? And how would you reframe that? Because it's such a free range question for ourselves. What do I want for my life? What do I want?
Yeah.
And we struggle to answer that. Why is that? And how can we reframe it in a way where we just know the answer because it's coming from a higher perspective? Our higher self is channeling that question into our mind.
Yeah. It's a great question. And for the last 18 months, we have tens of thousands of people who play in and around Mastering Alchemy. And the question I've asked in all of the classes, what do you want? No answer comes back. Oh, I want to be happy. A whole bunch of people say, oh, I want the car, the trophy wife, husband, I want the white picket fence. Some say that, very few, more and more are not even expressing that. I want to be happy. But the answer predominantly is, I don't know. Now let's back out of it. Your reference points are changing. So the white picket fence, American dream type of thing, or whatever the dream is in the world, that is no longer what I want. I'm beginning to separate from those third dimensional mom, dad, teacher, minister, how to be successful, what's important, points of reference. Your reference points are falling away. And so there's almost a boredom, is a word we've used. And I hear people go, I'm bored. Well, you're not bored. You're just losing your reference points on your way to beginning to recognize new reference points. And this is what's beginning to happen very rapidly because that aspect of light that I keep talking about that's coming in is coming in such a way where you're just going to start to find, now you just got to hear this, and it's easy to say, you don't know what you're talking about. It's a space where you're going to become comfortable. And there is no what do I want, because you're collapsing time, the past and the future perspectives are going away. And with the breath, you're being moved right into now. And if I say, are you happy right now? Are you enjoying this interview right now? Are we having a nice moment together right now? Am I comfortable with myself right now? And then we go away. Did I enjoy myself? Yes, I had a nice conversation. I feel good. That's going to be more and more the space. But simultaneously, and I'm going to say 3 years out, 5 years out, when everything changes that dramatically, you're simply going to want the apple to appear, and it's going to appear over and over, almost instantaneously, until you believe it will appear instantaneously. That's where we're going.
Is that because when we realize that we're living in a holographic universe, in a hologram. In the higher dimensions, thought manifests instantaneously. And that's why the apple can appear the moment we think of it.
Mm-hmm. Most will have that experience in a future moment. It will become how it works in a future moment. It will be very present to those born after 2012 in a future moment. But we're in transition. So saying that's going to happen from where I'm looking at the tip of my nose, it's like, yeah, whatever he said. But my life is. I understand. I watch it every day. But this space where we're in the process of moving, the more the game board of the third dimension falls apart, the more the guardrails, move on, nothing to see here. And we go, okay. And we move on. Those are all beginning to fall apart. And what I'm watching people that I get to play with, all of a sudden, they're starting to have an awareness. It's almost as if it's, what is that? That that you experience. And then all of a sudden the which is unconscious, turns into a thought. And the thought turns into an idea, and the idea turns into a concept, and the concept turns into a yes. You see, that's beginning to happen more and more instantaneously to people. It's like, oh yeah, I can do that. I need this. Oh, you have one, thank you. Is the experience we're stepping into. Now, I get it. I don't understand what you're saying. It's not happening to me. We're in transition. It's awkward. It's what was is falling apart and what is coming. But the fact that you're here right now having this experience is one of those extraordinary moments that you get to take back to the moment before you put the bag over your head. And most of your bags are kind of transparent. You can see through it. It's like, wait, this isn't what I want. I didn't come here for this. And there you're going to transform it into the next experience. From my point of view, kind of being at that point of nurturing with the guidance of Metatron, what will be. And it's exciting.
What do you feel Metatron is urging you most to communicate to humanity around what will be?
Actually, Metatron's stepping back and smiling. Metatron's, to me, is saying, hey, this is your experience. We've played together this entire time to get to this point for you to jump off the cliff and fly, Jim. Jump and fly is what Metatron is saying to me. And it's what I'm saying to you. And I can say that to you right here. You are in such an ideal, wonderful place as a personality. You're both the scribe and the recipient of the information. And and you are providing this kind of conversation to so many, and they're going, oh, I've always thought that. Oh, that's really interesting. Oh, I'm remembering. Oh, because he did and she said, I get it. This is the path I wish to walk. See, so where I play a role as kind of a pointer into what will be, you play a role to all of those as the pointer to what can be. And it's very exciting to play.
Beautiful. Toward the beginning, you talked about these untold stories of Yeshua and the Magdalenes. And I'm really curious to know which one of those stories do you feel is most relevant to the times that we're in and can really wrap all the teaching in this conversation together, taking such big examples like Yeshua and Mary Magdalene and applying that into the modern space?
See, to answer the question, it's the experience with them at the moment. Now, I'll answer the question more. But see, when you start to recognize how to reframe the electromagnetic and the wiring system of the bodies, the process of ascension, the process of illuminating yourself, the process of beginning to be conscious at the level you intended to be conscious, you've got to put the wiring back together. You've got to reframe things. For example, you asked earlier about, we started touching on psychic spiritual abilities. When you reframe the sixth chakra, the pineal center, or something in the brain called the medulla oblongata, and you configure it into a different alignment, all of your psychic abilities begin to function at once and present as knowingness. You just simply pause, take a breath, look, allow, absorb, and you know. And you can step into the yes that allows it to happen. In this relationship with Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, it is now one energy. It's not two energies. It's that space of one and one becomes an elevated state of joy and bliss and consciousness. And it's elegant. It's beautiful. And it begins to give you the awareness of reframing the landscape, the architecture, the atmosphere of your experience. All really big words that we hear. It's in the atmosphere. When you go into a really cool bar or restaurant and you go in and it's decorated and it's beautiful and you go, whoa, the vibe is really good. I like this feeling. See, that's the atmosphere of love. Right now it's subtle, it's quiet, it's gentle. It's kind of like walking through the meadow and all of a sudden seeing a little animal with its baby, the deer with the fawn, and you pause and you go, wow, nice. That's this experience right now with Yeshua and the Magdalene. It's a merged state of consciousness that's being presented to the world, not as duality of male and female or expanding and contracting. It simply is the state of consciousness. Now, I'll add one more piece to that. As that state of consciousness begins to be experienced, you're going to see in the next couple of years, and you know this from Bouchard and others, you're going to begin to see these levels of consciousness presenting themselves in form. The Metatron will come back in form. They already are coming back in form. It's that little kid that's creating the massive symphony. Where do they come from? They're the Metatrons. And they're all the other ones without names that you know but don't remember. They're all beginning to present. And the world is changing.
And from the energetic themes that we talked about that shape this year, how do you feel those themes are going to build onto what we'll experience now going forward into this next year? As we're coming to the close of 2025, we're opening sort of a new portal of 2026. A lot of the people I talk to nowadays are marking these as historic periods of time in this ascension process for humanity. What have you been feeling into regarding this?
Well, they're correct on one hand, historic points of time, but as long as you define it as historic points of time, you're basically spreading it out on a linear scale. But the moment you begin to recognize, one, this is happening now, you begin to experience that historic point of time. And so it's like watching a movie unfold, and all of a sudden a new character pops up and a new circumstance pops up. That's the story you're watching. And so what I would say is find joy, excitement, this moment of I'm comfortable, I'm pleased with myself, and step back to pause to watch the movie. Don't look for events that are occurring that are signs. There's a sign coming. It's a configuration that's just moving as you're watching and experiencing. And there's going to be moments where you're going to want to step in and jump into the lake and go, oh, this is really nice. And there's going to be moments where you go, no, thank you, not today. And it passes. It's not something that's coming. It's something that is to be experienced. And, you're going to see, and this is where the AI, the artificial intelligence, is going to start to nudge the technology side, is going to start to nudge people into this space of a new awareness, or an awareness that becomes allowed. You're also going to start to find that consciousness, you begin to change the labels. Excuse me. What would happen if we said the label of God is too small? And what if for the moment we said we're going to substitute the word God and we're going to call it consciousness? Now, if you allow that to be, for the moment, a possibility, you just simply change the game, because the Jewish God, the Catholic God, the Muslim God, the Buddhist God is now all the same in reality. There are no edges, there's no definitions, there's no labels, there's no goods and bads, there's no possibilities, rights and wrongs. It's consciousness. It's intelligence. It's wisdom, it's beauty, it's harmony. It's the joy I feel when I walk in the meadow and I see that little fawn with the mother. You see, this is the Yeshua Magdalene merging that's presenting. Would that make any sense? If you change the labels, see, we label everything, and labels have value because they create a point of reference, and labels are terrible because they create a point of reference. And when you can begin to remove the labels and allow what's possible, all of a sudden the two sticks that you call chopsticks become planters for the plant out in the garden. The labels begin to be removed and remove the restrictions of what is possible. And so when God becomes consciousness, it's not disrespectful, it's expanding.
Wow. Jim, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, brother. And there's so much wisdom that is pouring out of you right now. I feel like for this conversation, I would love to start bringing it to that close so that we can continue it in many other instances. As you know, we end every episode with a segment called The Final Trio. And these are questions that we ask at the end of every show. But before that, I would love to give you the space to let us know where we can find you, your work, everything that you have going on right now in your universe. Where would you send us to connect with you?
So masteringalchemy.com is the website for a body of work that was presented in context by the archangelics that said, how do I disrupt my reference points? How do I begin to be who I am? How do I rearrange the structures of the bodies? How do I begin to realign the structures of the bodies into one? And how do I turn on that light body, which is an integrated system? It's not another body that walks around. And that's a journey. It's not a 2-week class with a certificate at the end. It's your journey to knowing yourself. And so that's what Mastering Alchemy presents.
Beautiful. First question I had for you in the final trio is, if you could go back to the younger version of you that was just stepping into his clairvoyance, what would you whisper to him?
Oh, that's an interesting question, because I never left my clairvoyance. And that was the problem in most of my life, because I knew what was going on. And so, but what I would say to that one is, with the wisdom that I now have, chart your journey on your terms rather than the mom, dad, teacher, minister's terms.
Yeah. When was the last time the archangelics truly surprised you?
Pretty much, we just had a conference this past weekend with about 300 people involved. And it was an amazing experience because as I was providing information, it was as if there was a current going by, and it was going by faster than I was standing there. And I finally caught up to the current in the words that were being provided. And then the current began to be an amazing ride. And then the current began to get ahead of itself. And it was like it ran into cotton. It ran into a density in front of it as it pushed. And the whole time it was like, can you pay attention to this massively expanding space? And can you teach it at the same time? Teach it, wrong word, point to it for others. That was exhilarating.
Wow. Beautiful. When are we going to see another event like these in the near future?
Say more, like which of these?
The conference, the event that you just had with the 300 people.
I don't know the answer to that.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah, they're really exciting. And I am also beginning to be aware of a opportunity. It's as if my own personal journey is beginning to unfold with additional expanded and opportunities, not or. And so kind of there is a moment of pause here about how do I rearrange that structure? How do I step forward? And this relationship between the archangelics, in a way, the archangelics haven't said anything to me for some time. Because I am them and they are me, as they say all the time. You are we and we are you. And that awareness is beginning to, in my space, beginning to be the perception that I live my life in.
We're merging with those energies. We're no longer having to see them as something external to us that we have to close our eyes and channel to be able to bring them through.
Yes. And see, that's that intelligence that is simply beginning to be one. It's not two and it's not divided. It's you beginning to know you before you came to play the game.
And finally, Jim, for today, I wanted to ask you, how do you personally define or experience heaven on earth?
It's within the breath that you take every minute. It's within being conscious of breathing. It's within the space where you right now are able to kind of say to the third chakra, to the rational mind, to the emotional body, I give the mind permission to release what is there so the heart can now begin to experience itself as intended.
Just taking a deep breath to receive that answer and all the information and wisdom that came through today. Jim, I just wanted to thank you for your pure heart, for who you are, for your gaze, the light in your eyes. I can always see it when I'm talking to you. So thank you so much for being a part of this journey personally, but also helping so many people in the collective get into who they truly are and remember when they took that mask off and walk a new reality for themselves. So thank you so much, brother, and sending you so much love. Can't wait to do this again.
Blessings.